Hi, my name is Aida, and I am one of the Allegro Fellows. I joined Allegro just over a year ago, and today I would like to tell you about the dual anonymous proposal review that is being implemented this cycle. So as you know, dual anonymous basically means that the reviewer and the proposers don't know each other's identity. And to begin, I would like to first tell you about a little bit about the background of why they actually thought about doing such a process. So as you know, Alma is strongly committed to ensuring that the proposal review process is fair and impartial. And they have found systematics that have shown that there are biases present in the review process. And so for this reason, throughout the past few seasons, a few cycles, so cycle 7 and actually 5 and 6, they made efforts into actually making the identity of the proposers a little bit more vague. So if you have submitted proposals in cycle 7, you will know that they, for example, got rid of the first name of the proposers, and they also mixed the names of the proposers, so the PIs and the co-Is, so that the reviewers wouldn't know exactly who is the PI. So this cycle, we're moving towards a dual anonymous path, and one of the strongest reasons was based on a couple of studies that have come out that have looked at the old data, basically from cycle 0 until now. So the first paper was by Lonsdale et al. 2016, and the most recent one was by John Carpenter, 2020, which looked at basically these systematics in the ALMA proposal review rankings. And in particular, the latest one, so the Carpenter data, found very significant systematics in the outcome of proposals. So just a few to note here. They found that PIs who submit proposals every cycle have better proposal ranks than those submitting for the first time. They also found that proposals submitted by PIs from North America and Europe have had better rank proposals than PIs from East Asia and Chile. And also that proposals with female PIs have had a lower success rate in receiving telescope time than proposals with male PIs. Now, while the reasons could be manifold for why these systematics exist, there have been studies from other observatories, for example, HST, JWST, NASA, ESO, other telescopes. They have all made efforts into going towards a more anonymous way of doing these proposal reviews. And in particular, one of the most interesting results was from HST, a paper from 2014, and most recently 2019, that have found that only when they went to a dual anonymous way of doing the proposal review was when they managed to get rid of the systematics, especially in the gender disparity in the proposal success rate. And so for that reason, this cycle, we are attempting to do this dual anonymous proposal review. And in the rest of my talk, I will basically run you through all the guidelines that have been provided to help you write your proposals in an anonymous manner. So dual anonymous proposals basically mean that the team and the reviewers don't know each other's identity. So this ensures that the review process is fair and impartial, and it's of course the duty of the PIs and the proposers to anonymize their proposals. So you must note that proposals will still enter their names and affiliations on the observing tool, on the OT, but this information will not appear on the proposal cover sheet like it used to, and it will not also show up in any of the tools that the reviewers will use to assess the scientific merit of the proposals. So some resources to get some information. Also, as Violetta showed, your best source of information is the Proposer's Guide. So the information about the dual anonymous review process is summarized in section 5.2 of the Proposer's Guide. And you can also go to the science portal, so almascience.eso.org. And if you just hover over proposing, and go down to ALMA proposal review, there's a lot of information about both the what Katerina talked about the distributed peer review process, as well as the dual anonymous proposals. And they also have an FAQ section at the bottom here with some very interesting questions. If you have questions and you submit them to the help desk, they may also show up on this FAQ section. And of course, you can contact your local ARC. If you're in the Netherlands or Belgium, you can contact us, drop in our drop-in sessions, or send us an email, or write on the help desk. We would be happy to have a look at your particular question. Okay, so let's move on to some examples of how to write dual anonymous proposals. So the main takeaway is that as a general rule of thumb, proposers should not identify PIs or co-Is anywhere in the proposal. So this means that nowhere in the proposal, abstract, figures, footnotes, tables, or the technical justifications should you or your team be identifiable. So to avoid identifying yourself, you can use third person or neutral wording when referring to your own work. So here's an example. For example, you can say, instead of saying in Smith et al, we demonstrated ... you would say as demonstrated in Smith et al. So getting rid of the we there would get rid of your conflict there. When you want to refer to other data, so regardless of whether this is ALMA data or not, if the data is published, then you can refrain from using identifying words like our in combination with references. So for example, instead of writing from our previous ALMA observations, Smith et al. 2015, we estimate something, you would say, based on previous ALMA observations, Smith et al. 2015, we estimate something. Moving on, so when you refer to other data, so if this data is unpublished and you're presenting it in a figure, then you may use the ALMA identifier, so the year as well as the remaining numbers that are typically generated for your proposals. But again, you have to make sure that you use neutral or third person wording. So for example, instead of writing figure 1 shows the image from our cycle 7 ALMA program and then putting the identifier as well as the PI name, you would basically get rid of the PI name and write figure 1 shows the image from the cycle 7 ALMA program and then the ALMA identifier. Next is about software and public data. So when it comes to software and data that are publicly available, so for example, if your software is on GitHub or they've been described in a paper, you can refer to them as you would normally, making sure that you use third person or neutral wording. Otherwise, you can use language like obtained via private communication or some language similar to that. But make sure not to mention anyone's name, since that would then strongly imply that that person is a co-investigator or primary investigator on your team. So here's an example. We use our group's line identification package star, so that's quite clear that that is your group. Or we use the line identification package star by co-I Sandra Smith, which then also gives away who the co-I is. Instead, you would say we use line identification package star obtained via private communication, and that's acceptable. So for papers in prep and submitted, so proposers are not allowed to cite papers in preparation or submitted that are not on public archives. So for example, you would not be able to write Smith et al. Submitted demonstrated or our models show ... Smith et al. In prep, because these wordings would basically make it clear that your team is Smith et al. It's also not allowed to provide links in footnotes to papers that are stored on personal web pages. The only exception to all these rules is for data for papers that are on the public archive, like the archive, AstroPH. Otherwise, refrain from using identifying words like that. For resubmissions, you may note that you are resubmitting an ongoing Cycle 7 proposal, but you should not specify the proposal code nor the names of the investigators. So as per the slide about the figure, if you're showing a figure from this unpublished data, then you can mention the identifying the proposal code, but it's really not necessary. I would really recommend, if you can avoid writing the proposal number, that you do that in most cases. So when in doubt, basically don't include the proposal code. So here's an example. This is a resubmission of our ongoing Cycle 7 program with the program number and the PI name. Half of our targets have been observed, and we're resubmitting the proposal to obtain the remaining half. Instead, you would write, this is a resubmission of our ongoing Cycle 7 program. Half of our targets have been observed, and we are resubmitting the proposal to observe the remaining half. So the actual identifier and the PI name are not really necessary for the scientific merit of the proposal. The only exception to the rule is, so the large programs are done a little bit differently. So for large programs, the procedure is done in two parts. So the first part is a 6-page document that describes the scientific justifications as in previous years. This document has to be basically prepared in the same way that all the other proposals have to be prepared in following the dual anonymous guidelines and are submitted through the observing tool. The aim of this 6-page document is basically to motivate the proposal, the science basically, and the observations, to describe the data products that will be delivered, and to present the publication plan. The second part of the procedure then will consist of a 1-page statement that contains information about the management plan, the available computing resources, and an assessment of the scheduling feasibility. So the names and affiliations of at least the key members of the collaboration have to be included in this 1-page document, and this 1-page document has to be submitted through the OT before the deadline, similar to the other 6-page document. It's important to note that although large programs are providing identifying information about the investigators to ALMA, they will not be assessed based on this identifying information. So they will first be assessed solely on the scientific merit of the proposals that are done anonymously by the reviewing committee. Only once the scientific ranking of the proposal has been made, the committee will look at this 1-page statement. At that stage, the committee may recommend to the ALMA director that a proposal be rejected if they feel that the proposal team isn't qualified or doesn't have the needed computing resources to carry out the program. The scheduling feasibility will be used to determine which proposal fits best in the observing queue, given the scientific rankings of all the large programs, and also the time available. So there are restrictions on, for example, the LSD. And none of what is provided in this 1-page document that reveals who the proposers are will basically affect the scientific ranking of these large programs. So eventually the ALMA director will be the person who makes the final decision on which large programs get accepted. So let's move on to some concluding remarks that basically it's the duty of the PI to anonymize their proposal. This means that that acknowledgements or information about grant funding sources should not be included. And note again that the proposers will still enter their names and affiliations in the OT, but this information will not be released to the reviewer at all. So this is just so that if you are granted time, that they know who to send the data to, basically. So failure to follow these guidelines properly will result in proposals being rejected. Extreme violations will actually be disqualified even before they go to peer review. And proposals with minor violations, so for example, unintentional first name references that should have been in third person, they will be allowed to continue through the review process, but reviewers will have an option to flag such proposals and tell the proposal handling team about them. And it's understandable that, of course, for some really highly specialized fields, that the identities are really impossible to hide. But as long as you follow these guidelines that I just described, you should be good to go in the clear. So if you have any questions, the place to check again is the proposer's guide and this FAQ section on the portal. You can ask us any questions you have via email or the help desk. And you can drop into our drop-in sessions that we will have this week onwards until the deadline. So those are Wednesdays 2 to 3 p.m. and Fridays 9 to 10 a.m. Via Zoom. So with that, I would like to conclude, and thank you for listening.